There is a moment in every conscious creator's journey when manifestation stops feeling mystical and starts feeling obvious. Not because something dramatic happens, not because the world suddenly announces itself, but because something inside you quietly ends. You stop checking. And the moment you stop checking, everything speeds up. This is not a metaphor. It is not motivational language. It is an observable shift in how reality responds to you. Neville Goddard hinted at this moment often, but he rarely explained it directly. Not because it was unimportant, but because it cannot be understood until identity has already shifted. Before that shift, checking feels logical, responsible, even necessary. After the shift, checking feels strange, almost childish, like asking if your name will still be your name tomorrow, because checking does not belong to the state of knowing. It belongs to the state of waiting. And waiting is not about time. Waiting is about position. Most people believe they are waiting for results, but in truth, they are waiting as a person who believes the result exists somewhere else, in some future moment, under certain conditions. That position stretches time, but when the position changes, time collapses. Helene Hadsell never waited, not because results came instantly, but because internally nothing was pending. Her decision was complete, and completion dissolves time. This is why Neville spoke of the Sabbath, not a religious day, a psychological state, a state where effort ends, where mental movement stops, where creation is no longer interfered with. Sabbath is not inaction, it is non-interference, and the moment you enter it, life begins to move faster than logic allows. Now let me ask you something gently. What do you check most often? Your phone, your bank account, your email, your emotional state, the calendar. Whatever you check repeatedly reveals where you are still positioned as someone waiting for confirmation. There is no judgment in that, only clarity. Because the moment you see the pattern, you gain the option to leave it. Helene did not stop checking through discipline. She stopped because checking made no sense from the identity she occupied. This is crucial. You cannot force yourself to stop checking. That creates tension, and tension slows everything. You stop checking naturally when certainty becomes familiar, and certainty becomes familiar when the inner conversation ends. Helene had no inner debate, no back and forth, no rehearsal of failure, no emotional bargaining. She decided, she imagined briefly, and then she moved on with her life, not distracted, present, and presence accelerates reality. Because presence means you are not projecting yourself into a future where something is missing. You are here. And when you are here, time reorganizes around you. This is why urgency backfires. Urgency is future-oriented identity. Certainty is present identity. And creation happens only in the present. Now pause for a moment and notice this carefully. When you check, what are you really asking? You are not asking for information. You are asking for reassurance. And reassurance implies doubt. This is not a moral flaw, it is a positional one. Checking says quietly, maybe it's not done yet. And the subconscious listens. Every check reopens the question, and every reopened question extends the timeline. Helene understood something subtle and powerful. What you keep checking, you keep postponing. Not because life is testing you, but because checking keeps you identified with the version of you for whom the outcome is still pending. And identity always wins. This is why people feel time speed up when they finally let go. Letting go is not surrender, it is completion. It is the moment the question ends internally. And when the question ends, time no longer has a job to do. Time exists to move you from uncertainty to certainty. When certainty is assumed, time collapses. This is not philosophy. This is how the subconscious operates. Now here is where most people misunderstand. They believe stopping checking means becoming passive. It does not. It means confidence without supervision. You still act when action feels natural. You still respond when response is required. But you do not hover over life waiting for evidence. You trust the state you have entered, and life trusts that trust. Helene did not micromanage outcomes. She selected states. States produce outcomes automatically. This is why her results arrived while she was doing ordinary things: cooking, cleaning, living. She was not watching the door, and things enter most easily when no one is standing guard. Now, if this resonates with you, anchor it softly. In the comments, write one simple phrase: "I'm done checking," not as a promise, as a recognition, because recognition is enough to begin the shift. Now let's go deeper. Why does checking slow things down? Because checking keeps attention in a future-oriented loop. Every time you check, you momentarily leave the present, and the present is the only place where creation happens. Checking splits awareness. Part of you is here, part of you is waiting there. That split creates friction. Friction creates delay. Helene lived without split attention. She was where she was, and when attention is unified, movement accelerates. This is why time feels different when you are deeply engaged in something. Hours pass unnoticed. The same principle applies here. When you are no longer mentally monitoring outcomes, life moves faster. Not because you are trying to speed it up, but because resistance has ended. This is why Neville emphasized faith, not belief. Faith is not hoping, faith is resting. Resting in the assumption that the work is done. This is the Sabbath, and Sabbath is productive, more productive than effort will ever be. Now here is a critical realization. Checking feels productive, but it is actually maintenance of doubt. It gives the illusion of control while reinforcing uncertainty. Control is noisy. Trust is silent. Helene chose silence. Not outward silence, inner silence. The silence where nothing needs to be adjusted, and that silence became magnetic. At this stage of the journey, many people ask, "So what do I do instead of checking?" The answer is simple, but not easy at first. You live, not as distraction, as embodiment. You occupy your day as someone whose life already makes sense. You make decisions from completeness, not anticipation. You stop looking for arrival and start allowing it. Allowing does not slow things down. Allowing removes resistance, and resistance is the only delay. Now let's talk about time directly. Time is not linear. It stretches and contracts based on psychological state. Waiting stretches time. Certainty compresses it. This is why people say, "Once I stopped caring, it happened." They did not stop caring. They stopped waiting. They stopped positioning the outcome in the future. They allowed it to exist now, internally, and the world adjusted. Helene lived in a state of inevitability, not arrogance, not entitlement, inevitability. What was hers could not miss her, and what was not did not interest her. This clarity removed resistance. She was not emotionally scattered, she was centered, and centered people move through time differently. Now pause again. Where are you still watching the clock? That is not a flaw. That is simply the last place identity has not fully settled. And once you see it, you can relax there too. This brings us to the final misunderstanding. People think they must stop checking as an act of will. They cannot. Willpower creates tension. Tension recreates waiting. You stop checking when the state becomes normal, and normality arrives when you stop interfering. This is why Neville said the feeling comes after assumption. You assume first, you imagine briefly, then you stop, and the feeling of certainty settles on its own. Trying to stop checking keeps checking alive. Letting identity settle ends it naturally. Helene trusted identity. She did not manage symptoms, and this is why everything sped up. Now, if you feel something loosening inside you, something softening, that is correct. That is alignment. Now, let me gently offer this without breaking the flow. If you feel called to stabilize this state, not force it, but live from it consistently, there is a 21-day assumption challenge linked in the description and pinned comment. It is not required. It is simply a container for consistency. Now return with me, because the final lock of this video is not stopping checking. It is ending the inner conversation. As long as the conversation continues, checking will appear in new forms. But when the conversation ends, everything settles. Helene had no internal narration arguing with her decision. And because there was no argument, there was no delay. This is the level of mastery Neville pointed to. Not controlling thought, ending debate. And debate ends when identity is chosen fully. Now understand this clearly. You were never meant to manage manifestation. You were meant to assume identity and let life do the rest. Life is extraordinarily responsive to non-interference. The moment you stop checking, you stop blocking. And when blocking ends, flow begins. Time speeds up. Connections appear, responses arrive, outcomes finalize. Not because you demanded them, but because nothing resisted them anymore. As we bring this journey to its final breath, let this settle deeply. You do not need to watch life for it to work. You need to trust the state you occupy. And trust is quiet. If this message has shifted something in you, not emotionally but structurally, you may choose to remain aligned with this channel. Not for more information, but for reinforcement of a way of being. Because once you stop checking, there is nothing left to wait for. Life begins to move at the speed of certainty, and certainty, once assumed, never rushes, yet always arrives exactly on time.